Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving really deep into the groundbreaking ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, an incredible figure in Indian history, born April 14th, 1891.
That's right. And our goal here is, well, to really get to grips with Ambedkar's powerful critique of the caste system, and also to understand his vision for, a truly just Indian society.
So how are we doing that?
We're looking closely at his own writings, excerpts from Annihilation of Caste, for instance, and that really crucial final speech he gave in the Constituent Assembly. Plus, we've got some analyses from political science journals and the Press Information Bureau.
Okay, great. So the mission, if you like, is to unpack his arguments, his solutions, and really why they still matter so much today.
Exactly, why they have such enduring relevance.
All right, let's get into it. The absolute core, it seems, of Ambedkar's critique is this idea of inherent inequality, something just fundamental to the caste system itself.
Absolutely fundamental.
Yeah.
The key thing to grasp is that caste, decided purely by birth, well, it dictates everything. Your rights, your duties, your entire place in society.
It all goes back to the Varna system, right? The Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras.
Yes, that's the traditional framework. But crucially, it also led to the total exclusion and, frankly, brutal oppression of those outside it, the untouchables, now known as Dalits. It's like, imagine being born into a box you can never leave, regardless of your talents.
And the reality for untouchables back then, before Ambedkar's work really took hold, it was just horrific.
Oh, absolutely devastating. We're talking about systematic social grading, right at the bottom, economic impoverishment, political silence.
No voice at all.
None. Religious ostracism, denial of education, culture, basic human rights, treated almost like property, not people.
The sources we looked at had some specific examples that are just hard to stomach.
They really are. Like that incident in Zanu, 1935. Untouchable women assaulted violently just for using metal pots.
Yeah.
Seen as stepping above their station.
Unbelievable.
Or, under the Peshwas, forcing untouchables to wear brooms to sweep the ground behind them, carry spittoons. Dehumanizing doesn't even begin to cover it.
It's just shocking. And the ballet community you mentioned facing specific rules.
Yes, imposed by upper castes. What clothes they could wear, forced labor, no access to land or wells. And sheer violence, like in Chakwara, attacked for daring to host a dinner that included ghee, a clarified butter.
Just sharing a meal. These examples really drive home the reality.
They do. And this is where Ambedkar's point about the division of labor versus the division of laborers is so critical.
Explain that a bit more. It sounds important.
Well, defenders sometimes said, oh, it's just how society organizes work. But Ambedkar said, no, it's not just dividing jobs. It's dividing people.
Okay.
Dividing them rigidly by birth, not by skill or aptitude or choice. It completely locks people in, crushes economic mobility, prevents individual potential from ever developing.
So it wasn't just unfair, it actively wasted human talent on a massive scale.
Precisely. A huge cost to society as a whole, not just the individuals trapped within it.
Right. It's not like choosing a trade, it's being assigned one. And he argued this harm wasn't just individual, it damaged society itself.
Yes, very strongly. He argued the caste system fundamentally destroys any kind of public spirit. How can you build a nation, a community, with such deep, inherent divisions?
It prevents people from even interacting properly.
Exactly. It stops social intercourse, stops any feeling of brotherhood from developing. He even said it fostered an antisocial spirit, not just between major castes, but even within subcastes.
He had that quote, didn't he, about untouchability being unique.
Yes. Untouchability of Hindus is a rare phenomenon. Humanity in any other part of the earth has never experienced it. Really powerful statement about its uniqueness.
And he contrasted this lack of unity among Hindus with what he saw elsewhere.
He did. He pointed to the sense of community, the fellow feeling among Muslims and Sikhs, for instance, where shared identity seems stronger than internal divisions, unlike the way caste operated within Hinduism.
Which leads to his point about democracy.
Absolutely. How can you possibly have a democracy which relies on equality when your social system is built on the complete opposite principle? Denial of equal rights, equal opportunities.
Yeah.
It's fundamentally anti-democratic.
Okay, so that's the core critique. But people did try to defend the caste system.
Yeah.
You mentioned the division of labor argument.
Right, and Ambedkar just dismantled it. He kept hammering home. It's not labor being divided, it's the laborers, based on birth, not talent.
Yeah.
It leads to inefficiency, unemployment, because people can't do what they're good at or what's needed.
What about the biological argument, the idea of preserving racial purity?
Yeah, the blood purity defense. He thought that was, well, nonsense, basically. He used findings from ethnologists at the time to show there wasn't any real racial uniformity within castes or clear differences between them across India.
He asked those pointy questions, right?
He did. Like, what's the racial difference between an untouchable here and one there? Or a Brahmin and a pariah in the same region? It just didn't hold up the scrutiny.
So, if caste divides people so completely, did he even think a unified Hindu society existed?
That's a key point. He famously argued that Hindu society is a myth. What existed, in his view, was just a collection of castes, isolated units.
Not a real community.
No. Lacking that essential consciousness of kind, that feeling of shared identity and purpose needed for a true society or nation.
He made that interesting distinction between having similar things and possessing things in common.
Yes, that's subtle but important. Just because groups might share, say, some rituals or beliefs, similar things, doesn't mean they share activities, experiences, a sense of collective life. That's possessing things in common.
And caste actively prevented that shared experience.
Exactly. Kept people apart, focused inward on their own caste group.
Okay, so this leads to another really crucial, maybe controversial point. Ambedkar insisted social reform had to come before political or economic reform.
Absolutely. This was a major disagreement he had with many nationalist leaders at the time. They often prioritized political independence above all else.
But Ambedkar said that wouldn't work.
He argued it couldn't truly work. He used history. Look at Ireland. Look at ancient Rome. Deep social divisions, he said, always undermine political structures, no matter how well designed they seem on paper. You need to fix the social foundation first.
It's like building a house on unstable ground.
Precisely. And the same logic applied to economic reform. You can't have real economic progress if the underlying social system and the religious beliefs supporting it are based on inequality and division.
He used that example from Rome, didn't he, about the plebeian consul?
Yes, where even when a plebeian achieved high office, the deeply ingrained religious beliefs held by both the elite patricians and the ordinary plebeians themselves undermined his authority. Social beliefs trumped political structure.
So for him, caste was this fundamental monster blocking everything.
That's the word he used. A monster obstructing all forms of progress.
Now, what about Chaturvarnya? Even the sort of idealized, merit-based version some reformers proposed, he rejected that too.
He did, quite strongly. Even if you try to make it about inherent worth or qualities, like the Arya Samaj suggested, he saw huge problems.
Like what?
Well, first, the sheer practical impossibility. How do you actually classify millions of people into just 4 rigid boxes? And how do you stop it from becoming hereditary again? History showed the 4 Varnas just split into thousands of castes anyway.
And it was still inherently unfair, especially to the Shudras.
Exactly. Even in the most charitable interpretation, the higher classes acting as guardians, it was fundamentally unequal. It lacked mechanisms to prevent exploitation. He pointed to history, like the Maurya Empire, where weakening the caste system actually led to progress.
That's interesting. He also talked about caste-like systems appearing in non-Hindu communities in India, like among Muslims or Sikhs. How did he see those?
He acknowledged they existed, some social layering, but, and this is key, he said they lacked the same deep religious justification and, crucially, the same extreme rigidity as the Hindu system.
So the social glue was different.
Right. He talked about the lack of organic filaments binding Hindus together across caste lines. Whereas for, say, a Muslim or Sikh, their primary religious identity usually created a stronger bond that could override these other social stratifications.
And the consequences for breaking the rules were different.
Very different. Breaking caste rules within Hinduism could lead to complete social death excommunication. That severity wasn't typically present in the same way in other communities. For them, it was more of a social custom, perhaps regrettable, but not a divinely ordered institution like it was often portrayed in Hinduism.
Ambedkar also didn't mince words about the role of intellectuals, particularly Brahmins.
No, he didn't. He felt the intellectual class, which held significant influence, had largely failed. They'd been either dishonest or just indifferent about challenging caste injustice. He saw this as a major betrayal.
A failure of leadership.
Yes, and that led him to call for really fundamental religious reform.
What did that look like for him?
He called for the destruction of what he termed a religion of rules. He meant the scriptures, the shastras, that were used to uphold inequality. He wanted a religion of principles instead.
Principles like?
Liberty, equality, fraternity. Those core Enlightenment values.
And he had specific proposals for how to achieve this religious shift.
He did. Quite radical ones. A single standard holy book for all Hindus, officially discarding the authority of other texts that promoted inequality. A priesthood based on exams and qualifications, not birth.
Wow. Open to anyone qualified.
Yes, and maybe most fundamentally, a complete reevaluation of India's social and religious heritage, asking what actually helps us survive and build a just future. Keep that, discard the rest.
Okay, shifting focus slightly, Ambedkar's crowning achievement arguably was the Constitution. How did he feel about it himself?
He certainly expressed pride in it, but he was always quick to credit others too, Sir B.N. Rao, the advisor, and the whole drafting committee. He saw it as a collective effort.
It faced criticism, though, right? Taking too long, being too centralized.
It did. On the time taken, he put it in perspective, comparing it to constitution making elsewhere, U.S., Canada, Australia, and argued India wasn't unusually slow.
And the centralization point.
He pushed back on that. He stressed it was a federal structure. Powers were divided between the center and states by the Constitution itself, making them co-equal in their spheres. The extra powers for the center, he explained, were really for emergencies, not the everyday functioning.
But despite the Constitution, he still had worries about India's future. Deep worries.
Very deep anxieties, yes. He worried constantly if India could hold on to its independence. He knew the history, how internal divisions, betrayals had led to subjugation before.
The fear that caste and creed could trump nation.
Exactly. That people might put their smaller group loyalty above the country, jeopardizing freedom itself.
And he warned against certain methods for seeking justice, even popular ones.
Yes, strongly. He urged adherence to constitutional methods, reject revolution, reject civil disobedience, what he called the grammar of anarchy, as long as constitutional paths were open.
And the warning against hero worship.
Right, bhakti, in politics. He said while devotion might be fine for religion, in politics, putting individuals on a pedestal was incredibly dangerous. A sure path, he thought, to degradation and eventually dictatorship.
So for him, political democracy, having the vote, was only half the battle.
Not even half, perhaps. It was essential but meaningless without social democracy. Liberty, equality, fraternity had to be realities in society, not just ideals on paper. That was the necessary foundation.
He saw a fundamental contradiction otherwise.
A huge, dangerous contradiction. Political equality, one person, one vote, sitting alongside massive social and economic inequality. He warned very clearly, resolve this contradiction or political democracy itself will be blown sky high.
That final speech to the Constituent Assembly really drives that home, the urgency.
It really does. It's a timeless message. Real democracy needs social and economic justice. It's not just about the political mechanics.
So wrapping this up, Ambedkar's analysis is just incredibly powerful. It lays bare the injustice of caste, the harm it does to society, the absolute need for deep social and religious change, and that crucial link he makes between social justice and the survival of democracy in India.
Absolutely. And thinking about all this, it leaves us with a question, really, for you listening. Given Ambedkar's insights into these deep social contradictions, what do you think are the most pressing ones we face today, whether in India or, frankly, any society? And what kind of approaches, maybe even uncomfortable ones, are needed to really tackle them?
Definitely something to reflect on. We strongly encourage you to explore Dr. Ambedkar's work further and the vital ongoing discussions about social justice. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.